It's another episode of the Peak Signing Agents podcast with me, your host, DVO Derek Van Otten, where I'm going to help you be the best notary signing agent you can be. And today, with help with that, I've got Katie Tremulis from Florida joining us. Katie, hello, welcome. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am doing very well over here in sunny Florida.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm currently in Utah and it's
Uh-huh.
cold, cloudy, and snowing. So I'm jealous.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I just have done some marketing where it's like, if you're cold, just use remote notary.
I
So,
did see that. I did see that.
hmm
And I'm actually going to
hmm
be implementing that because I'm telling my clients, hey, you know what? The weather's bad. People don't want to travel. Let's get me on the video with them and do this on Ron.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to use real case, like things that are happening within the United States, that it's like,
Uh-huh.
if this is happening, it usually resonates with about half of the nation. So then they can just use me remotely. So.
Exactly. In fact, what you're talking about is your YouTube channel, which is named after you, Katie Tremulis. And I'll put the notes, I'll put the link in the description here so you guys can go check it out. And you've got a
Mhm.
lot of content there. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Um,
Okay.
But yeah, I am jealous that you are in sunny Florida. Now, we met a few months ago. I was actually getting into Ron myself, and
hmm
we got on a video call. We got on a Zoom. We talked. You explained to me a little bit about different platforms, and I've been doing Ron. I've been enjoying it. We've connected and stayed friends, so I'm excited about that. And I would
Yeah.
love for you to share your story with the viewers or listeners. And then again, we'll talk about your YouTube channel and what they can see there. But first, tell me, when did you become a notary?
So I have been a notary for about 11 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
I
Okay.
first, yeah, so I first started when I went into banking. I have a background in finance, so they just were like, "Can you be a notary?" And I was like, "Sure."
Right.
And I didn't really care at the time because it was just like a part of my job, and I just notarized as they came in. And then it wasn't until I started seeing a bunch of different social media that you can make money this way,
Ah,
that I actually started caring about the notarization part of it and
okay.
making revenue. So um, then I got into loan signing, and I loved it. And then I found out about remote, and then obviously saw the benefits of going remote instead of being in person, because I am bad at directions and I don't like my printer. So that made an appeal to me. And so I get to kind of trick out my office and just kind of hang out here
Oh,
instead.
yeah. That works
Yeah.
out great. Can I ask what was it that introduced you to loan signings? Was it like a YouTube video? Was it social media?
Yeah, so it was a YouTube video. I was basically there was a lot of life changes that was happening with me.
Okay.
So I was honestly a little bit in a panic because like a 9 to 5 was not going to work for me for my
Okay.
situation at all. So I was looking at like 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
trying to find something, and I came across I wish that I could remember like the person that started everything, but I came across a bunch of different YouTubes like Mark Wills, Vanessa Terry, and I just dove into it and I was like, okay,
Ah,
this is something that I can do. And I had to make sure that it wasn't like an MLM or a scam because
sure.
already I had already done that like 3 different times, and like I
MLMs.
got like, yeah,
Okay.
well, yeah, because I was like, okay, cool, like this is you do this, and then they're like, just kidding, you have to sell to all your friends and family. And I'm like, no, not again. So, so yeah, that was a bit of a game changer for me, and I really call my notary stamp like my safety blanket, just in case anything happens. Like I know I can
Okay.
always fall back on my notary stamp to be able to make revenue.
That's a great point. You can always fall back on your notary stamp in some way to make some type of income. That's awesome.
hmm
So you
hmm
became a notary because you worked at a bank and you're like, hey, this is not conducive to my lifestyle, sitting in an
Yeah.
office 8 hours, 9 hours a day. I need to do something
hmm
else. You're looking into things, you're finding about loan signings. Uh, so were you like doing the typical loan signings where you were going on platforms, getting jobs, you were printing out documents, going to people's homes. Is that how it started for you?
Well, I didn't really know about signing services in the very beginning. So
Okay.
I was just going out to the different companies,
Oh,
like
near you.
door
Okay.
to door. Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to the different places and then I found out about networking events.
Ah,
Um, yeah, because I didn't know. I had never been in a, business mindset or anything like that. I didn't need to know about networking events. So I found out about networking events and it was kind of like an easier way to get my foot in the door for getting in front of all of these businesses. So I think that that really helped with my business. And then I found out about signing services too. So I did both. I do direct and signing services, which I really like. Um, yeah, so that was how
yeah.
I got kind of started.
So out of curiosity, when you go to these network events, some of these ones that I've been to, you basically have like a quick 30-second pitch. Is that kind of okay, great. Do you remember what you would say during those?
Well, the first time that I got invited, I didn't know that I was going to have to talk. I thought that I could just go and like give my
Mingle.
cards, mingle. And I'm sitting there and they're like going around, and it didn't occur to me that I'm going to have to stand up and talk about this. So I could not tell you what I said the first time because my mind completely blanked. And I was
Okay.
like, oh no. But after that, it was perfect because then I got it kind of down for like my 30-second elevator pitch where it explains what I do in the most like concise manner.
Okay.
Um, because people don't like as much as they care about other people, they don't want to hear whatever it is that you're trying to sell to them. So you only have
Right.
like very short amount of time to like tell your story. So
So do you
that kind
remember
of
what the
helped.
polished version of that sales pitch was?
Yeah, so I still use it. So I'm a remote online notary. It is legal in all of the states because of law of reciprocity. It's basically like Zoom and DocuSign combined, where we remotely meet on a secured platform. So
Ah.
yeah, that's
It's
kind
funny
of
you
like,
say that. That's actually how I describe it to people. And I tell people, because sometimes when I'm telling my clients, hey, I can do the RON. And in case if anyone's brand new listening and they're wondering what is RON, it stands for
mhm.
Remote Online Notarization. And so when I would tell some of my clients, hey, yeah, I can do RON for you, they go, so how does that work exactly? Because they're not very sure. I'm like, basically it's a hybrid of Zoom and DocuSign put it together, and that's what it is. So
Yeah,
that's funny.
yeah,
I say
and
the
that's
exact same
perfect.
thing.
Yeah, and because of like the pandemic and everything, everybody knows what Zoom is. So it kind of makes
Right.
my job easier because they're like, oh, okay, Zoom. This is how I do pretty much all of my business now, if
Exactly.
yeah. So I think before that, people didn't really know all of the ways that you can do everything remotely.
Uh-huh.
So kind of makes my job a little bit easier as far as like knowledge base and
Uh-huh.
education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you're doing loan signings. How soon did you adopt the Ron?
Um, I would say probably 3 or 4 months in.
Oh, okay.
Um, be
Really early.
yeah, so I kept seeing on the notary blocks, like where you fill out all of your information as the
Yeah.
notary. There's a checkbox now that says if you are doing it in person or remotely. And I would check box that I was doing it in person, but then I was like, what the heck does this mean? And
Uh,
why do I keep having to like check this? So I was not working for a little while. I had my child and I wasn't in the workforce for a little while.
uh-huh.
And when I came back, that's when it was basically more adopted into the loan signing world. And that's when I found out about it, looked it up about it, if it was available in my state, which is Florida, and it is, and took all the training and did all of the good stuff to get licensed and or commissioned, and then kind of went from there. But I remember the first time that I did like an actual notarization, I started crying after I finished, like because I was so happy that I was like, okay, I can do this. Like this is cool. I can do this from home. It makes my life easier. So I do really like remote online notarization.
Right.
If you can't
You're
already tell.
comfortable, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I have found a lot of value and I'm able to do a lot of different things that I wouldn't usually be able to if I was working like a regular 9 to 5. So I
Ah.
like it. Yeah.
No, what you were mentioning there is, and that's actually specific more to Florida in your
Hmm.
notary block. Let's just say you're notarizing documents with me, and it just says, before me, Katie, appeared
Hmm.
Derek on this day. And then was this, and then there's a checkbox. Was this performed online or in physical presence?
Hmm.
And so I see that because I actually have Florida clients. So I see that mostly with their paperwork. So title
Hmm.
companies from Florida will usually have that. But like here where I'm based in Utah, I don't see that at all. So that's great. That was clicking for you. Like, what is this online presence or physical presence? What does that mean? So you
Yeah.
look into it. How long has Florida been doing Ron?
I think since 2012, but it didn't really
Okay.
come become prevalent until the pandemic because I think people realized that
Yeah.
if you don't do things remotely, it's not going to get done because you can't go out to like when COVID happened, I was working at a bank and we just basically shut down for I think two
Oh
weeks
yeah.
at least, and we were just like, I don't know, just figure it out. So then I think a lot of stuff got pushed through in order to get that to kind of happen and be more like the lenders were like, okay, it's fine for right now. So, and then they just kind of stuck with it.
That's
So
good.
yeah, yeah.
That's good. We were talking earlier, and you're like kind of like me. We're mostly seeing it with just sales or cash purchases. Um, the lenders are still slow to adopting it all. I mean, the whole real estate community, title, escrow, lawyers, everyone's kind of slow to adopting it. I think they're scared. I don't know what it is. You've been in really deep inside for a while. What do you think is holding them back from fully adopting it?
Yes. Okay. So that's a perfect question because I know the answer.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. So I went over to Las Vegas for a big conference with it's called Digital Mortgage.
Oh,
And it was a bunch of different lenders and underwriters, like basically all the people that are decision makers. And the main focus of almost all of the talks was about fraud.
uh,
So they are worried about fraud. So it's kind of up to us as the notaries and the signing services and like everybody within our industry, to kind of say like, no, we're more secure. That's how I would argue it.
okay.
That remote online notarization is more secure because they have more steps to go through. We have technology that kind of stands behind us to go over everything and make sure that it's who they say they are. So there's all these types of fail safes and to be able to communicate that to the lenders, the underwriters, the title companies, I think has been a game changer for me in order to start getting more of those signings and like opening up these conversations to these lenders and underwriters that, remote online notarization is safe, secure, and here to stay. So I think it's the cutting edge because they also talked about buyer experience for the loan signings and everything.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, it's a lot easier for people to be able to do loan signings from when they're on vacation or when they're on the side of a mountain or
Right.
like this has all happened where I've done like seller side closings where they're like over in Croatia and I'm like, take me with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the customer experience is, I think, another driving force behind the adoption of more Ron. So I think it's gonna come. So if you're on the fence about becoming a remote online notary, I think that you're gonna be on the cutting edge of a pretty large industry. So
Yeah, I just got into it more recently because my clients started asking. So I've always had
hmm.
my ear to the ground on it, just kind of paying attention, just kind of waiting for it. Because in my state, we've had it adopted for 5 or 6 years, but hardly anyone talks about it. And so I just been kind of ready. And then I started getting requests and a little bit more
Yeah.
requests. I'm like, okay, now's the time to, I guess, to start doing it. And I mean, I do enjoy just being from the comfort of my home and not
Hmm.
having to be out there. So it's been fun. I'm actually taking a lot of great notes that you're sharing, so I really
Oh,
appreciate all this.
of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
let's just
And
say
then
someone is going to market direct. They're going to go walk into a title or escrow company and try to pitch themselves. Is there something that you would tell them to make sure they say? Are there any keywords or anything like that that you would advise if they're going to bring up, hey, I'm also able to do Ron for you?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So the number one thing that I would say is you don't have to do mailaways anymore. And that is like their eyes usually are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know about like that was an option because mailaways. So I'll give you a little bit of an explanation. When you are doing a loan signing, and let's say you're in Florida, but then the signers are in Maryland, what ends up happening is that the title company has to print out the whole entire document, FedEx it, and ship it up there.
Uh-huh.
So then at that point, it's up to the signers, or if the title company wants to call a signing service or try and find a notary directly, um, it can cause all kinds of issues in case the notary isn't very seasoned, and then they have to then mail it back. And so that's a little bit of a pain point for these title companies, which is taken care of by remote online notarization because basically what they have to do is send an email to the notary, or do it secure through like a Dropbox or something like that, and then have the signers remotely notarize everything. So they can be in Maryland and they can be in multiple different locations, and
Right.
everything is done within the same day. So I would basically hit home that if they are like on vacation, they're out of state, they're out of country, you can still do it through that, and you don't have to deal with mailaways or shipping, which is a huge
Yeah,
thing right now because half of the country is covered in snow, and like I have all kinds of shipping delays.
me too.
Um, yeah, it's driving me crazy. So, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with FedEx and UPS. So,
Right. I hear you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so if some people are not hip to the notary lingo, mailaways or mail outs, or what they
Hmm.
call is when they're going to be hiring a notary to go meet with their clients because it's not in their area. And so either, yeah,
Yes.
you're right, they're going to ship documents to them, and then the notary will ship them back, or they
Hmm.
email you the documents and you print them, and then you ship them out. So they call those
Hmm.
mailaways or mail outs. That's the lingo that title companies and escrow companies use.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you're absolutely right. I am running into a lot of issues right now with FedEx and UPS. At the time of this recording, there is a lot of snow, and I've got delays like crazy, and my title companies are trying to scramble to get lock extensions and things like that. But it's like, yeah, but you know what? If we can just do this all online, we don't have to worry about
Hmm.
that. I'll just email you the documents in a secure way, and we're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I think is probably an easier way to kind of introduce Ron to these title companies is I call it the vacation closing effect, but essentially, like when the buyers or the sellers are about to close, they go on vacation. So it's like a common theme throughout. And then that can create issues because if you have to delay, it messes up all of the paperwork and then possibly the loan. So that is something to kind of hit home as well, that like if even if they do want to go on vacation, for me, if it doesn't really matter. So they can go wherever they want and I can still get everything taken care of as long as they have pretty good internet or Wi-Fi.
Right.
So yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
speaking, you're in Florida. I've actually had to hire somebody. I've had to hire a signing agent to meet somebody at Disney World. Get and do it. They have to step away from their family
Yeah.
vacation and do the paperwork. And
Hmm.
yeah, I've had it happen. But if they could just do it right there on their phone and just do everything right there, boom, it's
Yeah.
it's it's very convenient. And I know some people get a little nervous about it, but really once you start doing it, you're like, oh, this is simple. This is nice.
Hmm. Are you talking about like for the run platforms or for loan signing?
Both, yeah, both. So like
Yeah.
I've had to send somebody with papers to
Yeah.
Disney World and then
Uh-huh.
step away from their vacation. But if they could have just done it from their smartphone doing a run, they could have just done it right there on their phone. Yeah, as long as they have good internet and just tap, tap, tap. All right,
Yeah.
we're done.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like some of the other pushbacks that I get when I talk to title companies is that they have a demographic of clients that don't really know how to do The notarizations as far as like through the phone, as far as like, they don't know how to open emails or they don't know
Right.
how to be able to do stuff. And so I kind of just tell them that like if they can upload a check onto a bank, like you know how you have to take a picture
Mobile
of the front and the
deposit.
back of the check. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in banking, so I had to walk everybody through that
Right.
too. So if they can do that, then they can do this because it's not that much different. They just have to upload their ID, usually answer a couple questions, and then they get to remotely meet with me where, we hang out and get everything taken care of. But also I think that doing prep work beforehand to the signers is helpful. So I made a step by step of how to get signed on to some of the different platforms that I use. And then I also did a video in case they wanted to be like, in case they're visual learners, they can go through and just kind of watch beforehand. But that really, really cuts down on the time that it takes for them to get signed on is if they have a walkthrough because like I do this every day. And so I
Uh-huh.
know how to use the platform. I know how to get signed on. But these people, it's like learning an entirely new system. Where if they're not super tech savvy, it's not immediately obvious that you have to click this button, roll down, scroll down and do all this other stuff. So the prep work beforehand does make a difference. So it cuts
That's
down
great.
on
Actually, that
time.
was my next question. What is it that you actually say? So you get them on the phone, right? You
Hmm.
because you don't do everything through email, right? The first thing you do
No.
is probably get the phone call. What
Yeah.
is it that you say on the phone call?
So usually I like to say, hi, my name's Katie. I'm going to be remotely notarizing your documents today. Have you ever done a remote online notarization before? Usually the answer is no. So
Uh-huh.
I say like, okay, it's just a combination of Zoom and DocuSign combined. Are you familiar with that? And so it usually goes one of two ways where they're like, yeah, I'm tech savvy. I don't need you to explain this to me.
Okay.
And that's fine. Um, or they're like, I'm not quite sure. And then I go into detail where I'm like, okay, you're going to get an email with an invitation link. And then if you can just click through about 10 minutes before, I'm going to send out an email prior as well with the link and then some sign on instructions. And then here's my number, just in case you ever have any questions. You can either call, text, email me. And then we can kind of get that figured out beforehand. So that has cut down on time. And then, especially for loan signings, if it's sellers packages, I make sure to kind of hit home to have their writing instructions ready prior.
Good.
Um, because I used to not do that. And then they'd be like, oh, I didn't know that I needed that. And then it would be like 20 minutes of them like rifling through all of their paperwork while I'm just like,
Yes.
so it just kind of cuts down on that time too um, because I would rather be doing more notarizations or doing like marketing or
Right. Then waiting
nurturing
for
clients.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
In fact, good point. I actually, whether it's paper or Ron, I actually tell every seller packet, hey, and I don't know how you want your funds, but if you do want it electronically or direct deposited, have your bank information on hand.
yeah,
You
yeah.
ask any other questions like what time zone are you in? Do you ask like, do you have valid ID? What ID are you using?
I usually don't ask about the ID, because usually I only have to enter like in the state of Florida, usually you have to say like how or at least the title companies within the state of Florida ask if it's either a passport or driver's license.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so I usually put that down, but I just see it visually during the remote online notarization. And then I'm sorry, what was your other question?
do you ask other like what time zone are you in? That way
Oh,
you're in sync and things like that.
yes, yeah, definitely, especially when you're doing Ron to make sure that you're coordinating with the time zone. So I always say like, okay, I'm gonna meet you at 2:30 EST. See you then. But like I always have to do conversions because they're like, well, I'm in PST, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. So I accidentally yesterday booked myself for something at 6:30 because
Okay.
they were like 3:30 PST and I was like how much of a difference can that really be? And it's 3 hours. So I had my
Ah,
last signing yesterday at 6:30, which is fine. Like I have unconventional hours. But yeah, you
Yeah.
definitely want to make sure that you're on the same page because I've had it where people are like an hour early and an hour late, and that messes with my whole schedule. So make sure you're
Yeah.
checking that.
As a signing service owner, I am very good with time zones now, but I was not great at it in the beginning. I do a lot of conversion, like you said, like, hey, what is
Yeah.
and some states like Florida has different time zones. They have more than one
Yeah.
time zone. So I have to like, okay,
Hmm.
what time zone are you in? I'm like, okay, that's hour ahead, hour behind, 2 hours ahead. Yeah, you get that
Yeah.
way. But then as you probably know doing Ron, you start dealing with international now. So
Yeah.
I just did
And
one. Oh, go ahead, please.
well, no, you go first. You sounded interesting.
Well, I just said before me and you got on this call, I was doing Iran right before, and they're
Hmm.
in Dubai, so they're 11 hours ahead of me, and so I had to like time this. So I was like, okay, we have to make sure it's done on the same day. So okay,
Yeah.
I'll do it 7 a.m. my time, which is 6 p.m. your time. And
Hmm.
just last week I did one. They were in Japan.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, so basically I'm gonna do it at midnight
Hmm.
and that way it's 11 a.m. your time. I'm a night owl, so I'm up till like 1, 2 in the morning anyway. So I'm like, well, I can do a quick warranty deed at midnight. It'll take me 15
Yeah.
minutes. And it did. It took
Hmm.
me 15 minutes to do a warranty deed, and we're all on the same date now. So that's something I was like, okay, this is gonna be weird. You're gonna date it for January 5th, but
Hmm.
I'm gonna be signing it January 4th. I'm like, that might throw some things off. So that's something, is that something you've learned to adapt to? Like, hey, we're international now, so I might be doing things, like you said, unconventional hours.
Yeah, so I my sleep schedule is a disaster. So I usually don't really mind if I have like a client that needs to do it at like 3 o'clock in the morning because I have a bunch of clients that are over in Malaysia.
Oh,
So they apparently 3 o'clock in the morning is somewhat the best time for them. It's like usually midday. I forget the actual conversion, so forgive me, but it ends up working out for them. And then I know some notaries that charge a little bit extra if they're doing like unconventional hours. So that is something that is really, really nice. And um, when I was trying to figure out how to do everything with my schedule, like balancing childcare and the schedule, I really liked doing everything at like the 3 o'clock in the morning signings because then I didn't really have to worry about childcare because it made it a little bit easier for me to coordinate everything
yeah.
at 3 o'clock in the morning. I could work throughout the whole entire night and it didn't really make a difference. So
Now, do you do much of the on call? So maybe explain when I say what are on calls, and
yes.
I'm just and then you specifically, do you do many of those?
So on call means basically there's a couple different platforms that will provide leads to you in order for you to get some revenue. But I want to make a little bit of a caveat that that is not supposed to be usually your main source of funds. I would go and look elsewhere as far as like going direct or going with signing services. Excuse me, um, in order to have a stable income. But yes, you do have on call from some of the different platforms. I don't use it just because I know that the competition is so like the supply and the demand. There's so many notaries that are trying to get those calls that it's usually not conducive to my business to try
Which is
and
why you're saying don't rely on the on calls as your main source because there's just so much
yes, yeah,
competition. It's like
yes,
what happens is it pops up, here's an availability, and it's like first one to hit, I got
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I first started out, this was like a hard realization for me. But when I first started out, I saw the things where it's like, oh yeah, I can just do on demand. And I was like literally thinking in my head, like, okay, I can sit behind a computer for 8 hours and make this much. And that is not usually the case. There's so much competition between all of the notaries that kind of flood all of these different platforms, that it is better for you in the long run. And then that way you can keep your clients is to go direct, um, and just kind of make revenue that way. So Yeah. And the other thing is that when you do the open call, you don't necessarily know what type of document it is.
Oh,
So then if you're newer and then you don't know how to kind of do the document, that can be a little bit tricky too. So, but it is good to start out, like if you wanted to try and catch calls, you can always do that as well.
yeah, get some practice in on the platform, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's just say someone is going to pick up, they're ready. They're like, okay, I need to start doing Ron. I need to start getting into it. I need to pick a platform.
Okay.
What should they be looking for?
Okay, so the first thing that you need to look for is your Secretary of State because there's different platforms that are available, but you want to make sure that that is something that is approved through your state. So you can't do one, even if it sounds like the best platform ever, if it's
Uh,
not approved through your state. So check that. And then usually I would go on to a couple different platforms and see the fee structure, see the different features and benefits and everything like that if they have availability. And then after that, I would go and look at a bunch of different reviews as far as like YouTube reviews. Like I have a couple of reviews of
okay.
the different platforms and everything. And just kind of go from there and then reach into the community. So the notary community, at least for us, I feel like we are very inclusive and like open with our information. So dive into the community because that's how I built my business is asking everybody and like bugging everybody about like, okay, what about this platform? What about this platform? What
Oh,
about this
good.
platform? So yeah, I go and I ask a couple different notaries, like and you can always I'm gonna do a little bit of a plug, but you can always check out my channel. I'm gonna be doing a little bit more reviews on the different types of things to look out for. And then if you're in a state that has biometrics available, you want to make sure that you're definitely choosing a platform that has biometric availability. But oh, okay, I'm glad that
Uh-huh.
you asked this question. Um, when you are doing that and you're filling out all of your information with the state, I would usually recommend to do at least three different platforms, at least three
Okay.
different platforms. There are free ones out there available just to kind of make sure that it works for you because different people have different, volume or needs or like they're all different. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. So you want to just make sure that you do your research and have the availability to change it if you don't want to. So that way, like just in the state of Florida, I put pretty much all of the platforms on there that I can use.
Okay.
So that way I can switch and I don't have to do more paperwork. So
All right. Now
yeah.
you just mentioned if you have biometric in your state, do it. Maybe explain to people there's when the signer goes online, they're going to go through authorization or what's what I'm looking for.
Two-factor authentication.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah. Yeah.
authentication, yes. It's going to be biometric or KBA. What does KBA mean? What's
Hmm.
there? And then what's biometric? If you can explain those two differences.
Sure. Yeah. So when you get signed on, you always have to upload the ID. So that is going to be a non-starter. If they don't have an ID, you can't do it. The other thing is that you have like that's the first part of the two-factor authentication. The second part is two different options. The first one is knowledge-based authentication questions, which is also known as KBA, and that is linked to the signer's name and their social security number. So they would have to answer a series of questions in a specific amount of time correctly in order to continue and then go on to meet the notary. Usually for most of the platforms, they allow two times, and then otherwise they have to wait 24 hours until they can
So if they if
try
they if they
again.
don't answer the questions correctly, they fail and they have
Yes,
24 hours before they can even try again.
correct.
Uh,
Yeah. And so for the questions, they do that. So it's another way of doing anti-fraud, which is something to tell the title companies.
right, right.
But the questions are usually like, if you've ever gone onto a DMV and they ask you, like, have you ever been associated with these four addresses? And then you have to pick, or like, did you ever buy this type of car? And then,
Uh-huh.
like, it has all of these different types of cars. So it's those types of questions. So that's knowledge-based authentication. And then the other one, which is only available in some states, is biometrics. So biometrics is something where you would have them do a face scan, and then it has it go through some back end software just to make sure that the face matches the information on the ID and everything like that. So there's a lot more that kind of goes into the back end,
Right.
but that is essentially what it is. But if it's biometrics, it makes it easier for the signers to get signed on instead of the knowledge-based authentication. Um, I think because you don't have to answer those
Yes.
questions, you just have, as long as you can scan your face.
Right. Now, the reason why I'll tell why the reason why I got into biometric was
Mhm.
my clients would do some wrong here and there, but they would have the client fail because they would meet with an investor, and
Yeah.
they've in the last 2 years they've purchased 15 properties in the
Hmm.
last 2 years, and they're like, I don't know the zip code for this property. I have 5 kids, and I've co-signed on their cars, and I don't remember what year their car was, and they're
Hmm.
failing the test.
Yeah.
So that's when I went to biometric, and it's just if people are wondering what's that like, if you have an iPhone and you have face recognition, like you touch your screen, it scans your faces. Oh, that's you, and it unlocks your phone. That's biometric, or
Hmm.
that's a version of it, and that's what the platform uses. So if you're using the wrong platform, I always tell people too, make sure you have good internet connection and you have a device with a camera. You're
Yeah.
going to scan your ID and then scan your face, and it's going to, like you said, it's going to match it up. Say, oh yeah, this is that person. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, that's exactly right. So that's why I use
Yeah.
biometric, and then it makes it easier. They don't have to remember all these questions. They just
Hmm.
scan their face, and I can see them scanning their face, and like, okay, good,
Yeah.
you've passed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like when I see them do that because they have to turn their face from side to side so that way
Uh,
it can like scan their entire face. And it
right.
looks a little bit silly, but it's like I know what part of the process you're at right
Exactly.
now. So,
Exactly.
mhm.
So let's talk
Yeah.
about your YouTube channel. Why did this evolve? Why did you create a YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I have always been pretty open with my remote online notarization journey and everything like that. And then I kept getting questions as far as the different things to go into, and I started doing a couple different interviews about my business, and that kind of took off. So then I got more comfortable in front of the camera, so I started making a YouTube about all of the questions that I see either in the forums or they're
Ah,
asked by for me. So it's a little bit of an easier way for me to answer the questions without um, like I want to give a detailed answer. And so the YouTube is kind of a little bit of a way for me to answer the question, but not um, as many times as I get asked.
okay.
Uh, so I wanted to be able to like still give a resource, but it's kind of like an evergreen. So anyone that has a question about, Calendly or the best way to
Ah,
set up invoicing or, how to do foreign national notarizations, that is there. So that way they can kind of like see everything. And plus, I love our notary community. So I really wanted to make a resource as far as the things that I've learned or like the things that I wish that I would have known when I first started out because I had no idea like what I
right.
was doing.
Yes, I was
Um,
there.
yeah, yeah, like okay. Um, this is fine. So, but it was other people that were giving that information out that helped me the most. So I just kind of want to try and pay it forward.
No, that's
So
great. That's why I do this podcast and YouTube channel.
yeah.
It's the same way as me,
Yeah.
me, me giving back. I enjoy the community. I like the community. I like helping the community. And so it's
Hmm.
been fun for me. Now, you said when you are getting prepping somebody for the run, you
Yeah.
send them in email link, but then you also send them a separate email and you include some instructions along with the video. That's one of your videos that you include?
Yeah.
Which one
Yeah.
is it?
So there's a couple different ones. They're unlisted. But if you if you want, I can send them to you. But it just has the different platforms that I use. And
Ah,
then it's just a video of me like basically talking them through it. So if anyone is listening and wants it, just let me know. But otherwise you can do demos. um, by using Loom. So Loom is a software that I think is free, but you do have to pay if you want to download it.
Okay.
Um, but I just kind of use that for demos, and that's perfect, especially if you do email marketing, to kind of do demos without making them invest a bunch of time, or they might not be able to do a schedule with you. It's kind of a way for you to showcase what it is that you do without being there. So I really try and do that a lot because my time is usually, I'm usually pretty busy, and it's a nice way for me to kind of be there, but not. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
you got one video I've been wanting to watch, and it's a new video where you're comparing the pricing of three different platforms. And
Yes.
funny enough, one of my local notaries just sent me a link through one to do a mock. They're like, "Hey,
Okay.
I'm going to try this platform out. I'm going to do a mock. Can you go on there with me?" I'm like, "Sure." And there's a platform I never heard of before. I'm like, "I got to make sure it's approved. I've never even heard of this
Yeah.
in our state." So I looked up like, "Oh, it is approved." So she
Hmm.
sent me the link. We kind of I just was asking her questions, what she thinks about it. I'm like, "Well, you gonna?" And I told her, "You need to check out this video from Katie. She compares three platforms, and this is one of the ones she compares with the pricing." So you have
Yeah.
a lot of great content on there. Again, it's your
Thank
name, your
you.
YouTube channel is your name, Katie Tremulis, and I'll put again the
Hmm.
link in the description here. So
Thank you. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
thank you for coming on. Is there anything else you want to make sure we talk about or say before we wrap up?
Um, no, just thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be on this, because I'm gonna do a little bit of a fangirl moment, but I remember watching some of your content on YouTube and then like some of the
Oh,
other avenues. And you are super helpful as far as especially your mobile setup,
oh, thanks.
is like amazing. So if you I admire you for one posting on the process, because like even for me it's very intimidating to put myself out on social media, like even in this way.
Right.
So I appreciate you doing that, because this is from someone that was watching and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the best idea ever. I never would have thought of, having it a desk like that, and
Uh-huh.
then like being able to do that, it was very innovative, and thank you for sharing your
Oh,
information.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
appreciate you again, Katie, for coming on. Again, I'll put the links in the description here where people can go and watch your YouTube channel and watch your content. And then I'll put your social media as well.
Okay.
And if you're a signing service owner and you're looking for great notaries, in
Thank you.
Florida. Hey, Katie's awesome as well for that. So again,
Thank
thank
you
you for
so
coming
much.
on, and thank all of you guys for watching and listening. If you guys are getting into Ron or want to get into Ron, check out Katie's YouTube videos, check your state, make sure it's approved, get on a platform that's approved, go through the application process. You might have to double your bond, for example, like in my state.
Hmm.
So just make
Hmm.
sure you're following all the laws. That's number one important thing, following your laws. All right,
Yes.
everybody. We'll catch you on next episode. Bye.
Thank you guys.